A maid's daughter is denied her first-class seat. But 5 minutes later, the flight is grounded, phones are recording, and the pilot's career ends midair. "I'm sorry, miss, but you don't belong here." Those were the words that started it all. A little girl in a worn pink coat, clutching a one-eyed teddy bear, sitting quietly in seat 1A, first class. Around her, the air smelled of leather, money, and quiet judgment. One flight attendant's decision, one captain's pride, one misunderstanding that would bring an entire airline to its knees. No one on Flight 714 knew that the smallest passenger on board carried a name that would echo all the way to Washington. What started as a routine flight from Dallas to D.C. ended as a national reckoning. This is the story of how a maid's daughter in seat 1A grounded a plane, silenced a captain, and reminded a nation what true honor looks like. Just before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. Now let's jump back in. Enjoy the story. A little girl in a worn coat should not be in first class. This was the one unshakable truth in senior flight attendant Brenda Miller's world. Yet, here the girl was, a small, blonde-haired island in the vast, plush sea of seat 1A. Her name was Emily. She was 11 years old, and she was about to bring the nation's fourth-largest airline to its knees. The cabin of American Legacy Air Flight 714 was a quiet hum of expensive cologne and quiet importance. Businessmen in tailored suits reviewed spreadsheets on glowing laptops. A woman with perfectly manicured nails and a silk scarf draped just so flipped through a glossy magazine, her diamond bracelet catching the morning light. The air itself seemed filtered, scrubbed clean of the ordinary world. It smelled of leather, privilege, and the faint, sterile scent of recycled oxygen. Then there was Emily. She sat perched on the edge of the enormous seat, her small sneakers not quite reaching the floor. She wore simple blue jeans, faded at the knees, and a pink coat that, while clean, had seen better winters. In her lap, she clutched a brown teddy bear with one-button eye and fur loved thin in patches. His name was Major Ted. He had been a gift from her grandfather, and he was her silent, steadfast co-pilot on this journey. Brenda Miller watched from the galley, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. She had been flying for 19 years. She had served movie stars, politicians, and titans of industry. She had a sixth sense for things that were out of place. And this child, this small, quiet girl in the airline's most prestigious seat, was as out of place as a sparrow in a flock of eagles. It had to be a mistake. A child from economy who had wandered up, dazzled by the wide seats and extra legroom. It happened sometimes. They were curious. You just had to be firm, but gentle, and guide them back to their proper place. She smoothed the front of her starched uniform, a practiced gesture of authority, and approached the girl. Her smile was bright, professional, and entirely fake. "Well, hello there, sweetie," Brenda began, her voice a sweet, condescending melody. "Are you a little lost? Your mommy and daddy must be looking for you." Emily looked up. Her eyes were a clear, serious blue. She did not seem intimidated by the uniform or the smile. "No, ma'am," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm in the right place." Brenda's smile tightened a fraction. "Oh, I'm sure you think so. This is a very nice seat, isn't it? But this is first class. Your seat is probably in the back. Can I see your boarding pass, honey? I'll help you find your way." Emily held up the ticket she had been clutching in her other hand. It was a stiff, cardstock ticket, not a flimsy piece of paper from a home printer. The lettering was crisp. "Vance, Emily. Seat 1A." Brenda took it, expecting to find an error. She examined it under the cabin light. Flight 714 to Washington, D.C. Correct date. Correct seat number. There was no mistake on the ticket. So, the mistake had to be how the ticket was acquired. Her mind raced through the possibilities. A misprint at the kiosk? A gate agent's colossal blunder? Or something else? Something less innocent. "This is a very expensive ticket, sweetie," Brenda said, handing it back. The condescending pet name was a habit, a tool she used to establish control. "Sometimes there are mix-ups in the computer. I'm sure your real seat is very comfortable, too. Why don't you come with me and we'll get this all sorted out?" She reached for Emily's hand. Emily didn't pull away, but she didn't move, either. She just held Major Ted a little tighter. "My grandpa told me to wait here," she said, her voice unwavering. He said a man in a uniform would come get me when it was time. He said not to move from this seat. Grandpa. The word conjured an image in Brenda's mind. A doting old man who had probably used all his retirement savings to buy his granddaughter a ticket he couldn't afford. He probably didn't understand the rules. He didn't understand that a child couldn't fly alone in first class without a guardian, without the proper paperwork. It was a security risk, a liability. That's very sweet, Brenda said, her patience beginning to fray. But your grandpa isn't here, and the rules are very clear. Now, are you going to come with me, or do I need to get the captain? The threat hung in the air. For most passengers, the phrase, get the captain, was the final word. It meant you had crossed a line. It meant you were now a problem. Emily looked down at her bear, then back up at Brenda. Her blue eyes held no fear, only a quiet resolve that was unnerving in a child so young. The man is supposed to be a soldier, not a pilot. Brenda stared, bewildered. A soldier? What on earth was this child talking about? That's enough, she snapped, her professional mask finally slipping. You are holding up the boarding process. We have a schedule to keep. Now come with me. Right now. From across the aisle, in seat 1B, a man lowered his newspaper. He was in his late 50s, with kind eyes and a well-tailored but unassuming gray suit. His name was Robert Peterson, and he was a mid-level executive at a software company. He had seen the entire exchange. Excuse me, Mr. Peterson said, his voice calm and reasonable. Is there a problem, miss? The little girl has a ticket for that seat. Brenda turned to him, her face a mask of irritation. Sir, this is a crew matter. Please stay out of it. She's not bothering anyone, Mr. Peterson persisted gently. She's just sitting there quietly. Her ticket seems to be in order. Perhaps you could just let her be? Sir, Brenda said, her voice dropping to a low, menacing hiss. This is a matter of airline security and federal regulations. I need you to return to your newspaper. The businessman in 2C, who had been listening with open impatience, chimed in. For goodness sake, just get the kid out of here so we can take off. I have a meeting in D.C. Some of us have important things to do. A murmur of agreement rippled through the first-class cabin. The passengers wanted what they had paid for, a smooth, quiet, and efficient flight. A small girl in a worn coat was a disruption, an anomaly, an inconvenience. Brenda felt the support of the other passengers as a wave of validation. She was right. She was in control. She turned back to Emily, her face set like stone. Last chance, young lady. I'm calling the captain. Emily just hugged Major Ted. Grandpa said to be brave. Furious, Brenda turned on her heel and marched toward the cockpit. This had gone on long enough. Captain Evans would know what to do. He always did. He was a man who appreciated order. He would take one look at the situation and put this child back in her place. The cabin door hissed shut behind her, leaving Emily alone in the silence. Mr. Peterson gave her a small, encouraging smile. Emily offered a tiny, hesitant one in return. She wasn't scared. Not really. Her grandfather had taught her about waiting. He had taught her about following orders. And her orders were clear. Stay in seat 1A. Wait for the soldier. She smoothed the fur on Major Ted's head. The bear had been with her grandfather through 3 tours in dusty, faraway places. He had been a silent witness to things she couldn't imagine. He was a very, very brave bear. And right now, holding him, Emily felt a little of that bravery seep into her. She would wait, just like he said. She had no idea that her simple act of obedience was about to ignite a firestorm that would be seen and felt all the way to the highest office in the land. Captain David Evans considered himself the king of his domain. The cockpit was his castle, and the airplane was his kingdom. He was a pilot with 26 years of experience, a man with a commanding presence and an ego to match. His silver hair was perfectly combed, his uniform was immaculate, and his voice carried the easy, unquestionable weight of absolute authority. When he walked through an airport, people noticed. He liked that. He was in the middle of his pre-flight checklist when the cockpit door swung open. Brenda stood there, her face flushed with anger. Captain, she said, her voice tight. We have a situation in first class. Captain Evans didn't look up from his checklist. What kind of situation? He asked, his tone already laced with impatience. He hated situations. They were messy. They caused delays. It's a passenger. A child. She's in seat 1A and refusing to move, Brenda explained quickly. She has a ticket for the seat, But it's obviously a mistake. She's alone. No guardian on file. She keeps talking about her grandpa and waiting for a soldier. She's holding up boarding, and the other first-class passengers are getting restless. Evans finally looked up, his brow furrowed. A child alone in 1A? That was not just irregular, it was impossible. The system had safeguards to prevent that. Unless, did her parents dump her there and go back to economy? He asked. It was a common, cheap trick. Buy one first-class ticket for the kid, and then try to take turns sitting in the seat. I don't think so, Brenda said. She insists she's supposed to be there. I told her I was getting you. She didn't even flinch. That piqued the captain's interest. Most problem passengers caved at the mention of his name. This was different. Still, a problem was a problem. And the solution to all problems on his aircraft was the same: decisive action. All right, he said, unclipping his harness. I'll handle it. He strode out of the cockpit like a storm cloud moving in. The moment he entered the first-class cabin, the atmosphere changed. The low chatter stopped. All eyes turned to him. His 4 gold stripes gleamed on his epaulets. This was his kingdom, and he was here to restore order. He saw the girl immediately. She was exactly as Brenda had described her: small, blonde, out of place. She looked like a lost doll in the enormous leather chair. His first thought was one of pure annoyance. This was a ridiculous waste of his time. He stopped in the aisle next to her seat. He loomed over her, a formidable figure of authority. He didn't smile. He didn't soften his voice. I'm Captain Evans, he said, his voice calm but hard. My flight attendant tells me you're in the wrong seat. Emily looked up at him. She took in the uniform, the stern face, the shiny gold stripes. He was a man in a uniform, but he wasn't the right one. No, sir, she said politely. This is my seat. My ticket says 1A. I've seen the ticket, Captain Evans said dismissively. There's been a mistake with the computer. Now, this has gone on long enough. You need to go back to your parents. My mother is at work, Emily said simply. She's a maid. She couldn't come with me. The captain's expression hardened. A maid's daughter. It all clicked into place for him. The cheap coat. The defiance. The girl didn't know how to behave in a place like this because she had never been in one. She was fighting to keep the seat because she knew she didn't belong in it. I don't have time for games, young lady, he said, his voice turning colder. Where are your parents? I told you my mom is working. I'm traveling by myself to see my grandpa. He's sick. Mr. Peterson, in seat 1B, cleared his throat. Captain, he said, trying to intervene again. With all due respect, the girl has a valid ticket. She's a paying passenger, same as the rest of us. What is the actual problem with her sitting here? Captain Evans shot him a withering glare. The actual problem, sir, is that this child is an unaccompanied minor in a premium cabin without the proper authorization, which is a violation of company policy. The actual problem is that she is delaying the departure of a multi-million-dollar aircraft and inconveniencing 138 other passengers. The actual problem is that I am the captain of this aircraft and my crew's instructions will be followed. Is that clear enough for you? Mr. Peterson recoiled as if struck. He leaned back in his seat, silenced. The captain had made his point. There would be no more debate. He turned his attention back to Emily. His face was inches from hers. Now, for the last time, are you going to walk back to the main cabin, or am I going to have you removed from my airplane? Emily's lower lip trembled, just for a second. He was trying to scare her. She knew it. But her grandfather's words echoed in her mind. There will be people, Emmy, who judge you by where you come from. They'll see your mother's hard work on your hands and think it means you are less than them. You are not less than them. You are a Vance. And a Vance is never, ever afraid to stand their ground when they are in the right. She lifted her small chin. I'm waiting for the soldier, she whispered. It was all she had left. The captain's face turned red. He had given her a chance. He had been firm. He had been reasonable, in his own mind. And she was still defying him. This small, stubborn child was making a fool of him in front of his crew and his first-class passengers. Brenda, he barked, not taking his eyes off Emily. Call the gate. Tell them we have a non-compliant passenger. Have airport security meet us at the jet bridge. We're removing her. A gasp went through the cabin. Airport security? For a little girl? It seemed extreme, even to the impatient businessman in 2C. Several passengers began quietly recording the scene with their phones. This was no longer just an inconvenience. It was a spectacle. Brenda hurried to the service phone, her face a mixture of triumph and unease. She had won. The captain had backed her play, but a knot of discomfort was twisting in her stomach. It felt wrong. Deep down, she knew it was wrong. But she had come too far to back down now. She made the call. Captain Evans stood straight, crossing his arms over his chest. He was the picture of authority. The decision has been made, he announced to the cabin, as if to quell any potential dissent. We will depart as soon as this situation is resolved. Emily felt a tear slide down her cheek. She wasn't crying from fear, but from a deep, aching disappointment. Her grandpa had told her that uniforms meant something. They meant honor. They meant protection. This man's uniform seemed to mean nothing but anger. She hugged Major Ted to her chest and stared out the small, oval window. She didn't know what to do now. She had followed her orders, but it wasn't working. Maybe Grandpa was wrong. Maybe she wasn't brave enough. The jet bridge remained attached to the plane, a silent tube connecting the cabin to the terminal. The final boarding call had come and gone. The scheduled departure time of 9:15 a.m. ticked past. It was now 9:22 a.m. The engines were silent. Flight 714 was officially delayed. Inside, the tension was thick enough to taste. Captain Evans stood firm in the aisle, a statue of impatience. Brenda hovered near the front, avoiding eye contact with the passengers. Mr. Peterson stared blankly at his newspaper, unable to read, his mind replaying the captain's harsh words. The other passengers murmured amongst themselves, their annoyance curdling into a strange mix of discomfort and morbid curiosity. Every few seconds, another phone would be raised, its small black lens pointed toward seat 1A. Emily had stopped crying. She was now in a state of quiet resolve. She had done all she could do. She whispered into Major Ted's ear, telling him about the mean pilot and the angry flight attendant. The bear, as always, was a very good listener. A new figure appeared at the open cabin door. It was the gate agent, a harried-looking woman named Sarah, her face pale and stressed. She held a phone to her ear, a look of utter bewilderment on her face. She wasn't followed by airport security. She was alone. "Captain Evans?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling slightly. "What is it, Sarah?" the captain snapped. "Where's security? I told you to get them here 5 minutes ago." "Sir, I have a call for you," Sarah stammered. "It's from the airline's operations center.